here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, wait a second. Okay. My my pronouns is she, her. You can unmute yourself for POI. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. In this side of the house, we believe that this world is better than the current world that we are living in the first place. So take a look on this motion in the first place, why we prefer the sortition system as opposed to election itself. So before that, we are going to before we are going through to why we favoring this world where sortition system as opposed to election itself, we are going to break down what is sortition system in the first place. So in here, in government, sortition is the selection of political official as a random sample from citizen population itself. In here, the random sample itself, it means that anyone can it can be anyone that can be picked up as political official. But in here, sortition itself mean that we will make a requirement regarding which citizen was capable enough, who are eligible enough to be a political official. It is also mean we are going to ask their consent and willingness to be part of the government official, as like the name itself, sortition, meaning that we are going to sort them, not just picking them up randomly, but we are going to pick them up. The random sample mean that we are going to pick anyone without really seeing who they are actually is. So it can be anyone. It can be anyone in the citizen population, not in certain someone that that are going to be picked out in this political officials itself in the first place. So the urgency of the situation, like what happened in the status quo right now, the government that had the power, who are right now working in the government right now, have a certain agenda either for themselves or for the sake of their political parties. We wanted to make a better world than this. We wanted to create a world where the government do their job better and like what the citizen needs actually and what the country is actually needs in the first place. We believe that preparing this world, preparing this mechanism will make the citizen be part of the government, will help the government to be much more better, because we are in here trying to invite the citizen to be part of the government directly. Before that, there are certain conditions as to why that we prefer this one. In here, we are going to explain a few things. The first one, how in the status quo there are not many changes in the government using political election. So there were many things why this has happened, because like what we know, political official only fulfilling his party or individual agenda, thing like this. Why this is happening, the condition like this is happening. So before this is happening, the condition for many officials in the status quo, they try to be eye-catching, right? They try to be look like they should be nominated, they should be elected, they should be the one who win this election and all, by making people vote for them, like making a certain promising or certain promising that are would fulfill the need of the citizen and make a certain changes. But in the end, after they win the election, it only become an empty promises, because they had their own agenda for their own. Why it's like this? Because like giving a beneficial for his party and for his individual need, anything that would like allowing certain law for their particular party benefit, of course it would be their priority. Nothing still explaining, will be much more better beneficial for them. That's why we believe that in the status quo right now, they are much like what I already said, they are much more benefit in this current situation, where they using their authorization for the sake of their own benefit rather than the citizen itself. This, ladies and gentlemen, a really serious matter, because we wanted to comply with how we wanted to propose the word as a solution for the current status quo. We wanted the sortition as a way to replace the condition how dark the political election itself doesn't really give exactly a benefit for the citizen itself. So this is why we wanted to propose this world in the first place. So the second one, this political election costs a lot of money, either for the nominate and for themselves, even in the first place. So we cannot deny the expensive of the election itself. It's largely scaling to ensure that everyone had the right to vote in the first place. This also reached the condition where this expensive election will be also failed in the case where the one who nominated in the election itself are buying the voters so they can vote themselves rather than actually giving a good example that they are was deserving the vote of their voter in the first place. In here means that the election itself already losing the essence of this election, meaning that giving the voice for the citizen in the first place, right? That this means no clear direct citizen have a power or have a reach to the government in the first place, where the government in here had a job to actually help the citizen itself and providing them and keeping them safe, and also keeping them safe in the first place. But in here we can see in the condition that not only that it's expensive, the government losing their money, but how the essence of the election itself is already out. So in here we are preferring the sortition itself is to actually to actually helping the citizen to be part of the government, to make a direct contact for the citizen to be part of the government, to help the to improve the government in the first place. So we wanted a better condition for the citizen to have a better condition rather than just the condition where we use the political election in the first place. So in here, ladies and gentlemen, we can see there are many harm from the current status quo in here. So we are in here really believe that the sortition system can be replaced and can make a better world for the citizen, for all the people in the country itself, rather than just one particular side of the government. So in here, as the opening government, we would like to propose. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Next, we welcome LO.
First testing is, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Setting up my timer now. Now I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. We as the opposition team, as the opening opposition team, has two goals under our debate today. First of all, we would like to prove on why sortition system is actually harmful. There is to say that it from the practical benefit side, and prove why election is better from moral justifications as well as practical justifications. But first, we would like to point out the lack of mechanism and nuances on the government team. Basically, the government team failed to give us on how they're actually going to provide the check and balances that the democratic and election system already provides to us. That at the end of the day, we believe that election system already gives us check and balances in the system of political party systems, as well as people from different ideologies constantly battling each other to prove their worth. Right now, before I get into my arguments, I would like to give a comparative speech on how our world actually looks like today in the current status quo. So first of all, we believe that everyone already gets the representation under the election system. There is to say that everyone votes for the leaders that they want, for the leaders that represent their views as an individual, and as a group. And we believe that it is immoral, that it is not the moral justification of the government to basically take that away from them. Second of all, that the officials that are already voted already proved themselves through years of experience. Thus, at the end of the day, it is actually ended up giving them dignity and respect from the people. There is to say that even if at the end of the day they created some food for themselves, that the government will still be able to be trusted anyways, because at the end of the day they have proven themselves to be able to rebound through years of experience. Now, on why the sortition system itself is harmful. First of all, onto the principal argument. Now, panels, we are currently living in a democratic country where everything should be represented. We believe that it is not morally justified for the government to basically take away these rights of the people. That is to say that we are actually going to be changing the current election system with the sortition system. We believe that election is better for the status quo morally under two different bases. Right. First of all, is the fact that people are still able to represent themselves through election, thus creating better representation. Now, why is this important to begin with? We can take a look at the case of riot in America and the constant demonstration in Indonesia. Right. Those basically already prove to you on how thin the threat of stability that the government creates under the current status quo. Now, at the end of the day, because of this, we believe that it is morally unjustifiable to basically for the government to basically rely on chances and basically jeopardize the stability with no real mechanism under the sortition system whatsoever. Why does this matter? Because at the end of the day, the government team basically doesn't explain to you on how they're actually going to incorporate the system without actually jeopardizing the representation that the people already have. And they didn't even prove to you on why at the end of the day the people who are already chosen to be a government official under the government side of the house is not actually going to and that it's not actually going to prioritize their self-interest to begin with, which would be the main point of their entire argument, right? Second of all, even if the government chooses people from the let's say that even if the government chooses people from the marginalized community, right? We believe that it is not enough, since at the end of the day they will still won't be trusted right away, because the entire reason people are marginalized is because there are already prejudices and there are already unprivileges coming from those people. That's basically making the majority of the society believe that they are not the right person for in leading them. Even if there has been people like Obama who basically succeeded in becoming a part of government and basically maintains his dignity, but at the end of the day, it is already done after proving himself. He basically started his career as someone who is low in political hierarchy, and then basically starts climbing up his way into the presidency. At the end of the day, this basically gives him enough dignity to basically keep his position without having people from the majority society basically questions his background that is coming from the marginalized community. Why is this not going to happen under the government side of the house? Because at the end of the day, they're going to be picking people who basically has almost zero dignity under the current majority society. In which case, at the end of the day, they're not actually going to have enough power to basically back themselves up. In which case, at the end of the day, it is actually going to be jeopardize the entire stability of the entire society. But before I move into my practical benefits, is there any question? Okay, I'm going to be continuing into my practical benefits on why it is actually dangerous, on why this sortition system is actually dangerous. Basically, it is dangerous since the current political climate in the status quo is already done under the basis of experience. That is to say that election basically provides a way for people to gauge the power of the current political candidates, for example. In which case, at the end of the day, if those people already think that the candidates already have enough experience or basically represents their view as a whole, in which case they're going to be electing them. But what happens under the world that the government team proposes to us, in which case in those worlds, basically the people who are actually going to be picked by the government, who are going to be sorted by the government, are not actually going to have enough we are not actually going to have enough recognition from the people. That is to say that those people who did not go through any campaigns, they won't go through any political campaigns in order to let people know about their agendas, and they're not actually going to be letting people know about their political standing. Why is this important? Even if the majority of the government still doesn't necessarily fulfill his political promises, we believe that it is still important, because at the end of the day, it still represents their views as a government as a whole. In which case, even if it is not fully promised, the people will still know what they're going to be aiming for. Now, at the end of the day, based on this, what we want from the government is the comprehensive analysis on why jeopardizing the safety and the stability that is already happening in the status quo through the way of election is basically justified under the government side of the house. And second of all, on how they're basically going to make sure that everyone who is going to be sorted by the government are actually going to be able to keep up their dignities to the people, and how they're actually going to keep up with the rising demand of the current status quo. That is why you're proud to oppose.
Thank you for that speech. Now we welcome DPM.
My preferred pronouns is he, her. And if you wanted to give me a POI, please just unmute yourself. Thank you. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have to understand in this current political world is like a Korean drama and a soap opera in some sort, right? It looks like a circus to the point society does not even have the trust towards this political party anymore, towards the government anymore. And this is the problem in today's debate, not whether or not they are being justified or they are actually experienced, so on and so forth, in order to become the political party, a part of the parliament, for example. In one side, you have a group who wanted to bring back the GBH and only to fulfill their political or the individual agenda, right? And the other hand, there are another political group that wanted to tackle down the other part just for the sake of the other party to go down, right? It does not exactly bring any impact or benefits to the society, and that is the current problem in today's debate. We say that yes, we do understand on how there are also some many good DPR representatives, for example, in today's world, but the cons and the harms that comes with it is not equal to the benefits that comes with it is not equal to the harms that they cause, right? Before I get into my extensions, I would first off give several responses towards the opening opposition, right? Number one, they stated on how the sortition system is very harmful, and they brought two arguments about moral justifications as well as practical justification, right? Number one, going into their moral justification, they said that they are fighting their way to the top and actually being experienced in their job. And exactly, we have two responses for this. Number one, they are being backed up, that they have the way and resources to become a political party, for example. They have the money, they have the way, they have the resources to bring them into that state, right? And second, even if they are experienced, even if they are good, we say that does not make them understand about how does it feel like to be the that does not give them the right to be to represent the marginalized people, which I will later on explain in my extensions. And second, they also brought about check and balances, and we don't really understand what check and balances they're talking about, but it also leads to the how we are on how these political parties fighting for each other, and will later on be create a higher standard when it comes to this political party, which we don't see what happening in their side of the house. We are okay with political party fight for each other. For example, we say that there has to be a pro and anti-government side, right? But notice how this endless fight never really bring any point and it impacts towards the society, unless their side of the house can prove that all the fights and feuds happening towards one political party into the other actually bring any benefits and impacts to the society. We are not going to justify those rights, right? And we do not see that feuds and whatever feuds and arguments to be important. Going into my extensions, number one, we said that the election system can only accommodate to a certain extent when it comes to giving the right of the people, right? Giving the people these illusions that they are the one who is in control over the country. These illusions that somehow they are the representative or being represented in the parliament, for example. Yet we see in so many parliaments themselves, they are treating it like some sort of joke and only brought their rights in front of the government, for example. And notice how it is usually the winning party are the one who are able to have the most members in the parliament. Let's talk about the democratic system, which is not exactly democratic in the first place, right? For example, you vote for person A to become a DPR, and then there is another section in the MPR, so on and so forth, where those people are not exactly being picked by society, but more so from their party, right? Because their party have the power to do so. For example, if PDP was the one who is winning the election, then PDP members are the one who is usually going to fill the DPR parliament, right? As well as Gerindra, for example. If Gerindra was the winning party, then the members of the DPR and MPR will be filled with Gerindra. So we do not see this we do not really see this that we as society are become the democratic representative when it comes to the political system, right? Second, let's talk about the election system itself. Those who are picked are usually given the time and opportunity to promote themselves, right? So on and so forth. They are given the time to put out biased arguments, and this resulted to the society being persuaded, despite the fact that is it actually true or not. There are several problems. And it narrows down to give the society the false hope, the false advertisement, the false expectations towards these people, right? And second, the other problem is that they are usually picked based on their technical competence, for example, their educational background, how many times they have been elected as a DPR member, for example, or their achievements in the political world, their connections, for example, like how many times they have been elected, so on and so forth. With that being said, they are being picked on their capability and the words and the empty promises that they give out. But in reality, we see two scenarios scenarios happening in today's status quo, right? Number one, we said that it is never justified for them. It is not a justified reason for them to suddenly become the representative of the people, since they are not really they are not really one of those people. They are not really the majority of the people. The politic world is something that they surround themselves with. That is the only thing they understand. So how exactly they could be the voice of every other people, right? So the poor, for example, the non-privileged, for example, so on and so forth. How could they actually represent a community that they are not even a part with to begin with? For example, when it comes to feminist movement, we mainly use as women for the one who first-hand experienced the misdemeanor in the first place, right? That is the face of the group. And second, when it comes to the Black community, we of course use Black men or Black women to become the face of the community, right? We do not use we do not use white men just because they are privileged or just because they experience, just because they understand. We do not see that as the case in these movements, right? And that is why we wanted to implement the same thing into our political world. We want those who are directly a part of the community itself to represent their voice. For example, not an Agota DPR who represent the poor, but at the end of the day, they are also the one who corrupt the government fund, the tax, so on and so forth, right? And second, worst off, their promises were never even implemented in the very first place after 5 years being elected, right? And we see more harms to this. And lastly, this is the right choice. How the sortition system is the right choice that would really express the will or the voice of the people, right? Because my previous speaker has already stated on how we can create a more diverse community. By random, we can get representative of all the people with no biased interest, not as much political interest. Therefore, the standard of the democracy will more likely happen in our side of the house, since we are giving those who are consented and eligible to become their own representative themselves, right? So unless you wanted to stay in this egoistic and individualistic political circumstances, as well as the corrupted world of politics and limited democracy, we say you should vote for our side of the house. Proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Now we welcome the LO.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
My motion preference is to unmute yourself. My comments is she, her, they. I'm going to start my speech at 3, 2, 1. To win this debate, both bench need to prove whether or not this substitution system is worth or not worthy to oppose the election system. So then, what is our goal in here? As the opening opposition, we will prove it to you that substitution system is not a right system, and how this election could actually reach our goals in the terms of governance. First, why by this election system we could reach more represented and could reach our goals as democracy, and how we will reach this case. We say that it will happen because, first of all, by democracy we will gain trust from our society, because our society won't have accused to say that, oh, the one who get choose is the one who actually get have been said. So the government is actually playing on us. And secondly, how by this election system has a more clear and transparent system, because once the substitution system happening in their side of the house, we said that there will be no exact parameter on how they choose their voters, and how they will convince our society that there is no setup in these types of system. Second of all, several questions that I will answer towards this motion. First of all, why substitution could harm the government itself and our society? First of all, we say that our society will have the sense that they will think that they lose their right of choice. As my first speaker already said, that we say that our society will feel that they doesn't have any more right to raise their voice, because we didn't give them the choice to the chance to actually choose their own leaders, which actually will happen because the first system is is democracy, where everyone could actually choose their leader. Second of all, is how our status quo right now that happened will unsuitable for the sortition system, and how election system is more efficient on facing this our status quo. Secondly, why sortition is a very risk option. Ladies and gentlemen, we said that this sortition system is so easily to get manipulated on how they actually choose their people, how people will tend that is actually have been set up, and there is no exact parameter on how they actually will choose their society, even though they said that it will, the one who get choose will get for their consent. And also it doesn't have actually a very clear system, and how by this sortition system is so easily to get misexplained by our society, and how by this sortition system, when they choose other people, our society, especially in minority, will say that, oh, my community doesn't really get represented, and we don't want it to happen as the opposition side of the house. Thirdly, how this election system has more beneficial and actually is a better system. We say that election system is a more democratic one, even though there is a lot of assumption out there that our democracy is not actually democracy. But we say that compared to the sortition system that has already been explained from the opening government, we say that our democracy system is better and more democratically. Secondly, we say that this election system has more clear system because it's already been applied for so long time. So it is more easy for our society to actually do some check and join to do some check and balance. We said that it's also less risk because the system is not easily to manipulate, and less people will feel oppressed because we actually still give the right to choose their own leader. Second, jump to my rebuttal. We said that the moment they said that election system, the moment they said the election system, there is no significant change. Therefore, they want to change it. But we said that what to make sure sortition system will give a significant change, especially in the trust from our society. We said that by this sortition could actually give a trust from our society, but their mechanism that actually doesn't have a clear parameter and not really that transparent. Secondly, how by they portray the election system, and how they say that election system has given false hope, blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. We said that the sortition. We say that what to make sure that sortition system will not likely to get that such stereotype that the sortition also will not give false hopes and so on and so forth, and how by the sortition system could give sense of represented. They said, we said that it will not likely to be happen because our under the status quo that happened, and the extension of our minority, they will likely to say that they are not represented yet, even though they already get represented. And secondly, I would like to jump to my argument as the example how in our governance situation is actually have been used. This sortition system has actually been used in our DPR system to ask the society what is their aspiration, to hear their voice in order to make policy, they said. But then what's happened in our DPR, it's the status quo that happened is that the policy that have been making that have been made, it still raised demonstration toward the policy. We said that this is the moment to say that sortition system is not efficient and it's not the right choice, especially to apply in our governance system. So what have been we thought proof to you? We said that the correct we said that the opening government already proved you how they talk about the sortition system is a new or fresh system to gain more trust from our society, because they say that by how election system is actually give them false hope and so on and so forth. But then we say that we prove to you how this election system could actually still get improved, to get fixed in order to gain the trust from our society, even though we said that the democracy itself under status quo, it's actually happened, even though we don't even though there is a news that our democracy is not really democracy. But we said that by maintaining this election system, we said that it is better and could reach our goals more. And conclusion, we proved to you how this sortition system is actually not a good system to replace the election system, and how this sortition system only worsen the status quo that happened in our side of the house. Therefore, we say that as the opposition side of the house, we don't really want to take that risk. Therefore, that all being said, we are so proud to oppose.
Thank you for that speech. Now we welcome member of government.
Please wait a moment. I'll set my timer first. Oh, for gender preference, she or her. For your preference, you can just unmute yourself because I won't be able to look at the chat box. Okay, so I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The opposition side of the house didn't actually really have this kind of utopic view of the world where they see that okay, by election is going to be fine, the marginalists are going to be heard and others. These actually are very utopic from the very first place, and we think that it is actually very unholistic from the very beginning. Why? Because we can actually see in the status quo how it is not working at all, and second of all, they actually don't even give this kind of new solutions, for example, or new view, for instance, how it is going to change in their world when they actually implement and giving this kind of election to like stick to the election from the very first place. So a few rebuttals in this case. First of all, about how they said it in the check and balances in election, about how they can also represent the peoples or the marginalized and others. We believe that it is actually very ridiculous to begin with. Why so? First of all, we need to actually understand the difference of being pointed out and asked to be pointed out. There's a huge difference from you being elected and ask people to let's vote me, let's vote number 1 or number 2 or number 3 and others. Then, for example, you are chosen by the people. Okay, I'm going to choose you because I believe that you can do this better. By letting, for example, the society to actually choose you because they actually trust you. This, of course, we gain this kind of this mutualism feeling about how okay, I need to preserve their trust. I need to do something to actually make they or the society is very satisfied in the very first place. Right. So I believe the argument has been fallen from the very first place. Second, it's about no thank you. Second, it's about how they said this kind of manipulation and democratic values is actually there in our side. But we believe manipulation will often happen in their side. Why? It is easier for them to buy votes, for example. It is easier for them to manipulate the numbers of votes, for example. It is easier for them to do this kind of let's just say the facts in the parliament system and others. It is going to be very different if you're actually going to state that they are actually going to have this more democratic value. Why? Because we believe that when they're actually, let's just say, there's an election, people have this kind of tendency or have this kind of majority vote to actually vote, for example, those who are actually in the big parliament, for example, or those who are, let's just say, they're often to choose the people that actually have resulting members in the parliament system and others. They actually forgot to mention, they actually forgot to actually ensure to us how they're actually going to hear this kind of people that are, for example, political illiterate, or those who are actually marginalized and become things at the end of the day. Which I will answer more on my argument later. This means that arguments are not standing at all from the very first place. Why we're going to win this debate? Two arguments in this case. First of all, how our work will look like. Second is about how we're going to define the welfare even better than the election. First, we need to actually understand the sortition idea where it is made to fit to the society's need. Notice how sortitions work when a group of society find a representative to represent the staff as a whole. This means the society is going to be first, trust them. Second, agree and have this kind of whole, like having this kind of whole same answer to the to ask this kind of person to represent them. Thirdly, it's about how they actually can be capable to guarantee, as for example, the OG brought by the mechanism. Second, it's about how the candidates are then chosen from all social groups. This means that we're actually going to represent the social groups and we're not going to divide from this certain social group. Notice about how in certain elections, this number of social groups are actually being divided based on which parties they actually from which parties that they actually vote to. For example, social parties A might vote for Golkar, for example, or social group B might vote for Nasdem or others. This is actually this voice disparity is actually there and wouldn't be inseparable from their case. It is going to be very different from our case, since we're going to make those people to have this kind of same answer from the very first place and are agreed to begin with. right? Second, it's about how the society, the problems in this case with the election is about they have this kind of lack of sense of burden. This is the thing that OJ even forgot to brought about how, first of all, they said that this kind of election is rhetorical. Yes, they do mention this kind of thing, but they don't really actually answer the main point or the main core of the urgency in this case is about how those people in election ended up to have less sense of burden. This sense of burden, as we can see, is an obligation. Their sense of burden in this in the opposition of the house is an obligation to win the election so that it would keep their parties a good their party's good name, for example, or let's just say to keep their self-interest is very high. So yes, the opposition of the house might say that, okay, how could you ensure that in our side there's not going to be this kind of self-interest and others? Yes, we can actually deny the desire of human spirit to begin with, but as they are in our case are selected based on society evaluation, thus this will have a huge difference with the opposite side of the house, how we're actually going to have a huge burden because they're actually responsible towards the society's demands on them. Because societies, this group of majority are actually going to pick this kind of person and actually point this kind of person, and it's going to be different when you asking someone ask them to vote for you, because the people that understand that, okay, I don't have this kind of obligation to actually pick somebody. I just can, for example, pick somebody random and okay, let them win or others. In this case, society have the obligation to pick who are going to represent them, who are going to bring this kind of laws, who are going to, for example, as making their city to become something better and others. This means that those society, of course, going to think, of course, going to evaluate, of course, going to put this huge burden and huge demands on these people. They are going to be represented by them, right? This is actually why we need to be we can be justified about how sortition system is far better than the election system. Second, it's about how we're going to define the welfare, right? So how are we going to be represented well despite any groups you are? We're going to be represented well despite any groups you're from. The opposite side of the house are forgetting the assistance of those abstaining issues, those who are actually marginalized, those who are politically illiterate, and others. This means, for example, as there are many premises and campaigns and parties, they are tend to forget these premises actually say the same thing, but it didn't really touch the core needs or the urgency of the society, since they see it from their point of view, not from the society point of view. Right? They are actually forgetting about this political illiterate people from lower class group, for example, or those who don't understand, those teenagers, they don't actually really understand this kind of political illiterate itself, right? It is going to be easier for us to know because we're going to hear their voice, because we're going to hear the requirements from their side. It works the same for those who are marginalized, LGBTQs, for example, or the others, minorities, race, and so on and so forth. We believe we should win this debate. We are so proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Now we welcome member of POP.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, hold on. Okay, my pronouns are she and her, and I will take POIs via unmuting, but please don't badger. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, before I proceed with my speech, here are a few rebuttals. So first, many people may have the credibility to run for politics, but do not have the personality, will, and time to do so. We are currently having voted officials already, but officials already who do not fulfill their promises to the nation. So why would random people, what can assure us that random people will actually fulfill their promises? So, and even if we accept their benefits, they didn't say why people would be willing to accept this. Like, why would people backlash or revolt against the government for doing something like this? And like, yeah, so people value their votes and their autonomy. They won't let something like that, their voting rights, to be taken away from them easily. So we, the closing opposition, stands that the sortation system does not guarantee that we will have a flawless political system, and we stand to not just retain, but also improve the electoral system. First, people would want to have competitive officials to win more than once, and if the official is competent, the chance that they will be randomly selected again for the second time is low. How likely it is that we will pick the same the same competent person in a group of 599 incompetent people more than once, right? And another is being able to run several times is important for building the technical competencies of how to build a cabinet, how to write a policy, how to diplomatically resolve issues, and how to consider political or economic implications of your actions. So not just that, inherent to the government's accountability, we vote for people because of their promises and platforms to fulfill. And with relation to having someone random, how can we hold them accountable? During elections, people campaign and tell the majority on what they're planning to do in order to have a better world to live in, have a better country or state. Um, with people not seeing this, how can they feel safe and assured that these people who will be representing them will actually do a great job? And yeah, so if you do a good job, it is literally, if you do a bad job when you're randomly selected, it is literally no one's fault. If it is the fault of randomness and you can't blame that, so how would you send randomness to court? So if they do a good job, we can't re-elect them. If they do a bad job, we can't hold them accountable. Both of those are bad. And we're saying that sortation, the bad effects of sortation is heavier than its good effects, they're saying. Also, randomness has a statistical error, and there is a chance that people who are chosen might represent a higher minority and even are anarchical views rather than those representative of the people. The majority will not want people to be governed. Majority will not want people to be governed by people who are randomly forced upon them. This is why in the electoral system, the candidates would have to show their plans and personality in order to gain people's votes and trusts. While OO identified the problems of the model of randomness, they did not give a solution to any of the concerns of OG. And here's what we're going to do as the CO to improve the electoral system. First, we will be having a strict checking of credentials in order to make sure that those who want to run are capable of running, like education-wise, background, and everything else. Next, you will be limiting political dynasties in order to limit the self-interest of politicians, which eventually lead to corruption. And next, we will also be having more accountability measures for corruptions. As we all know, a lot of government's problem is corruption. So more than that, we can also implement a rule where all candidates will be limited to a certain amount of money they may spend during elections in order to avoid vote buying and what the government and the others are saying, that the rich wins most of the time. At the same time, we can create subsidies for low-income politicians in order for them to be more recognized. This is because when it comes to election season, a lot of those who are not rich are not really recognized because they do not have enough budget or enough money to pay for those advertisements, to pay for those publications that are necessary in order for people to see them, to know them, and for people to understand what they're planning to do once they get seated or once they get elected. Out of everything that I've said, these show that there are so many ways to stop rich people from winning and help the minorities without requiring this randomness. This is to say that the electoral system gives more rights to people and gives more good sides that people will see who their leaders will be, can trust who their leaders will be, and make sure that the leader is also capable, has a good heart, because it's really not just education and background that is required to become a good leader. It takes a lot more than that. So with all these said, sortation brings more harm than good patronage. And and there is always self-interest when it comes to people. And by having sortation, patronage and political dynasties may be more tolerated and can eventually lead to more corruption. So with all these said, I am proud to say that we should retain and improve the the electoral system. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Now to close government health, we welcome Government Whip.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Right. If you have any POI, please just unmute your mic because I won't be able to see the chat box. So I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, what makes us different from OG is that their scope of argumentations only defaults on the mutual trust of government and society, right? We're going to extend this debate with the identity of which why sortition system is going to create a better representation in the society. We say that we live in a world where the system, government, political leaders, and society is using the beautiful lie of democracy, right? Why is it true? Is that because the reasons why our democracy is a lie is because the election system that we use is full of fraud, for example, such as bribery, cheating, rhetorics, and etc., which is used by any means by our political leaders, right? Then why is this problematic? Reasons why is election system will just fill our government with people that is not true in being the representative of our society and nations. This is true, for example, as in Indonesia, where our political parties are most of them is adopting centralism in their stance when approaching the society, right? We say when people that is not true and genuine staying on government seat, it could make everything go all right from the policy and their performance at best, even if they are being glorified as a capable person by the opposition side of the house. This is why we think sortition system is better, and we prefer it more because it's more genuine and representative compared to the election system. So several rebuttals that is coming from our side of the house. I don't understand how capability becomes so important on the opposite side of the house. What I question you is the clear pattern method of capability, right? Do you mean a capable person is a person that have a lot of history in sitting the public seat? I don't understand how it defines the capability, right? But that's how we can see those that you say is capable never actually create a policy that represent the general public, right? Secondly, they say that sortition system is easily to be manipulated because I don't really understand this point because we believe that sortition system is actually going to be randomized, right? Thirdly, they say that election system is actually much more beneficial, more democratic, and so on and so forth. But I strongly disagree because they have really ideal situations and they never depict status quo that it could make clear. Last but not least, it was about how they say that if we create using sortition system, it means that it's randomized. Like we say, it doesn't matter. What matters is their genuinity, which is much more important than the bloody depicted capable person that opposition glorified. Like, which I'm going to elaborate more why genuine people is much more better. Secondly, I don't understand the idea how political actors under our word is not going to be held accountable, right? We say that if a person is doing something that is moral, illegal, everyone is going to be held accountable, right? Which let us say a political actors under our word do corruptions. Of course, they will also be held accountable as what happens naturally also in your word. So we think that holding someone accountable actually exists under under both sides of the house, which I believe that this argument is irrelevant and should be debunked from the very first place. So moving on towards my argument, which consists of 2 points, which is about how sortitions will create a better representative, and secondly, how it actually could create a peaceful world, right? So first argument is about how sortition system will create a better representative. Why is it true? Reason why a lot of minority not getting their voice ensured and policy that side with them to the past to the ground is because election system is never fair and never democratic from the very first place. Minority representative never got a chance to win elections even if minority did get the representative in the political seat. We say even if they do, they will have difficulties to make a policy to pass on the ground, which means election system means nothing. Like it's a beautiful lie. This is very different with sortition system, whereas we pick every politician in the future based from every layers of society. Therefore, we didn't need to worry that minority not have any representative at all, right? So what is the ideal is that then what conditions, right? We believe we live in a world where a lot of minority never being felt represented at all. Even in conservative countries such as Indonesia, for example, LGBTQ communities still feel difficulties to do something. They have difficulties when doing official things such as creating KTP, SIM, and etc. Right? This is very problematic, right? Whereas we need to understand how making KTP, SIM, and etc. is one of the basic things that every citizen need to have, and it is the government obligations to fulfill that. This is what is happening if we use election system, right? Whereas we never achieve the ideal situations that we wanted, because LGBTQ never have a representative that actually represent them in the political spectrum, and never could have a policy that side with them to pass on the ground. So what problem hinders the ideal is that then again the burden of proof that we need to prove in order to achieve this kind of ideal situation is how can we as government ensure that the politicians that we put in the government will have the qualification to become good politicians, right? Since we can say that sortition system is basically a lottery, taking random sample from every layers of society. We say that it's okay. We believe that when people sit in the government seat, what they need to do is basically knew what their society needs. We believe that even if they are personally not qualified, they have this burden to improve. They have burden to learn, as what my first speaker have stated to you, and become the best version of their representative type. We say that those people that is, let us say, unqualified will have moral obligations to be the best in order to represent their community, right? Moreover, let us say let us say that opposition bring this case. We say that is unfair for you, right? Isn't it the same like you indirectly told us that people that is poor and uneducated is not eligible to become a representative from the very first place, knowing that it is the right of every citizens to become a representative, right? This is very problematic with election system. They always glorify to you that everyone can become a representative, but at the end of the day, only those who are rich that cannot empathize with poor people become a representative in the government. This is why policy that actually cite
POI
never actually exists from the very first place. No, thank you. Secondly, how can you actually solve the problem? Like, this is why we propose these motions. We believe that sortition system would be able to clear every cloud that exists in the election system. Like, so why is it important? Therefore, why is it important is that because if you want a world where everyone have their representative in this living and living accountably, we say it is urgent for us to prefer sortition system above election system. Then again, this is why what makes our argumentation is exclusive, because we have better representative than what is compared to status quo. Second argument is about how we could create a peaceful world, right? Why is it true? As we see nowadays, a lot of people getting too sensitive, right? Whereas our political leaders never really satisfy any part of our society, because what they did is only rhetorics and etc. to gain votes. What happens at the end of the day is a lot of policy that is wanted to be ensured in the society never really actually passed to the ground, right? A lot of public outcry is happening, and stabilizations never actually exist in what opposition actually glorify. Like, I question you, what is the stable word that you actually glorify when political leaders never even thought they are deemed as capable, never actually be genuine, right? From the very first place. We believe even if you are capable doesn't mean you are genuine, and policy would never pass, right? This is very different under our side whereas the political actors is genuine. When genuinity exists, there's no hidden agenda when representing their community, right? Which at the end of the day, we can pressure them to be capable at the end of the day. Which is why I say this is the ideal world we want to achieve, is where check and balance that exists. And that is why we are more than proud to oppose these motions. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Now to close the debate, we welcome Opposition Whip.
Hi, first of all, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, cool. So, hi, I'm pronouns are she and her. I appreciate you guys to chat. So yeah, I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Chair, have you noticed that from the very start of the debate, teams have been talking about which of the systems are more better? Is it sortition or election? Wherein it is ironic that our very own government, who is primarily concerned is catering for the best of society, on how that proposing such system would help them, is actually contradicting to what they really want to achieve and what this whole debate is trying to address, which is how it is the best for the best interest of society, especially the vulnerable, the susceptible, and minority. I'm going to engage with the cases of all whole houses and relate it as to why it is in the best case of closing opposition why we win this debate. So the whole government bench has been talking about how sortition works in the first place. We're sort them with requirements and standards and randomly picking any citizens that could represent the voice of the people. I just like to say how it is very detrimental on their case because it harms the very idea of sortition itself gives you an open door of letting bad leaders elect in the first place. This is where my partner's case became relevant, how an election nuances that having an election limit helps and how in election people are how in election give people voices to whatever say. So to further engage to the whole government bench, so sortition system does not really guarantee that it will have a clean election. Notice how the political system itself is already very flawed, and it is much easier to amplify corruption, tyranny, and other corruption, which was not very discussed in the whole government, which is why this case is relevant. And secondly, how it is much better in the case that election you should go with the side of election system. I understand, Chair, that the common ground of every team why they're discussing this is the flawed system. We would like engage this narrative we're in how they were talking about that the election system will work in the first place. So dive into that, why do you in our stance go for an election system? So in an election system, do you have the voice of the people? If the only concern of the whole government is for you to cater the best interest of the people, I think it's better to say that retaining an election system caters to the voice of the people for so many reasons. One, sortition brings harm because it gives opportunities for tyrants and politicians. Notice how they've been talking about that you have to randomly select people and how it does not really guarantee us that how their credentials would even work, because even if they forgot to even say this, even if that these people have credentials, we can look over to it. Even the most people with credentials or educational backgrounds can resort to tyranny, can resort to doing all bad stuff. So it does not make sense why they're pushing to with the sortition system at the end of the day. So my partner has been talking about why it is very important to retain the electoral system, and he was able to further discuss what is the best case scenario at the end of the day, which I would stand for. In an electoral system, you give campaign or periods or movements an opportunity to know their political leaders. And secondly, on all sectors, especially the minorities, will benefit. Because notice no one ever even talk about how the sortition system paves or opens door for these leaders to even take advantage of these minorities. And this is a very relevant extension to the case of my member, because we also have to understand that even if they say that an sortition system, you cater to the best interests of the people, you do not give us a guarantee that it will be smooth and flawed. Notice in the context of the Philippine context, wherein most of the politicians there have good background and good education, but right now, people in the Philippines are suffering from falsification and injustices such as drug war, extrajudicial killings. Philippines used to be in martial law, and one of the leaders during that time is even having a good education background, which no one even considered. So their whole idea of sortition, as much as they really want to propose that it is good and beneficial in the context of society, but to further extend and further support the case of my member, it brings more harm than good at the end of the day. So to further engage why we are better off than OO, in OO, they have been talking to you about why sortition system is harmful, which would agree on that, and how politicians represent society. We will prove to you why it is much better in our side, because it is in our side. When you retain an electoral system, it is much more helpful. And why are we better than openings? Two things. Number one, the characterization of the effects of sortition in the long run. Notice that if you allow the implementation of sortition system, you are affecting lots of stakeholders, individuals, such as the society, people, and minorities. Notice if sortition system happens in the first place, there's no really guarantee that even the most credentialed politicians would even have or serve these people in the first place. Notice how they would even use society as an advantage to retain themselves in power. Notice how even the most credentialed, as they would say, that this system would work, would even flood the said system. Secondly, on how I want to extend the case of my member, how election system is much better, because number one, you amplify movements and empowerment such as feminism, how people are being misjudged through racism, stuff like that. And secondly, it amplifies the voice of the people in the very first place. You notice how the whole government that contradicts their very notion that the sortition system, it provokes people to have a voice in society. But notice that if the sortition system went to flaws, when bad politicians are in the power, you're actually giving them an opportunity or closed doors for these people to voice out, because the moment that you do at a certain statute system, there's really no 100% guarantee that will work at the end of the day. So with that said, sortition brings more harm than good because it amplifies more the personal benefits, which was already being discussed by my partner, such as corruption, tyranny, and populism. And then this is a very relevant case on the context of my partner, wherein in populism, it's like a misrepresentation of the people, right? Notice how sortition system opens door for these electoral leaders or for these political leaders to take advantage of it. They would use the ordinary minorities for the bad, right? It is a very rampant issue in society that the poor people are being killed, being false represented, and notice how they could easily take over the justice system and the justice system. And secondly, how my partner's case is very relevant in the context of how the implications of the government will work and the best interest of the stakeholders in society. Notice how the domino effect of implementing sortition system suppress minorities even more. So I don't really understand what makes government and the opening stands out even more in this case, wherein I was able to provide a clear picture and a characterization of the long-run effect of sortition system. It suppressed further minorities, wherein sortition takes the advantage of minorities, and the sortition system opens doors to our harms and flaws in the current system, wherein if there is an electoral system, there should be an improvement to how it goes. And the electoral system is where you're going to benefit these minorities. You amplify their voice. You gave them the voice to how they will stand for themselves at the end of the day. So I don't really see the point of the whole bench arguing for that. And with that said, I would like to thank everyone, and especially my partner, for being able to make it for us grand finals. And yeah, we are very, very proud to oppose.
Thank you for that speech. That concludes the debate. Thank you all very much for this wonderful debate. And congratulations for making it this far. Now, to all debaters and observers, you may leave this breakout room because the judges are going to use it for deliberation. Once again, congratulations to everyone.